Welcome back to the CryptoBot channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now markets are pumping despite the Q2 GDP numbers for the US coming out negative. So in just a moment, I'll be talking about whether or not the US is currently in recession. I will also be talking about why markets are currently bullish, and I'll be sharing some price targets for Bitcoin and Ethereum later in this video as well. So definitely stick around to the end so that you don't miss out on any of this important information. First of all, we need to talk about these US GDP numbers. And for the first quarter of this year, first quarter of 2022, we already know that that was a negative GDP quarter, which basically means the GDP declined for the first quarter of this year. And if you've been subscribed to this channel over the past 1 to 2 months, then you'll know that it was very likely that for the second quarter of this year, we were also due to see another negative GDP result. But up until today, that was always just estimates, because right now, this result has been made official. Right now, it is official that in the second quarter of this year, in Q2 2022, the US GDP declined by 0.9%. So what does this mean for the US economy? And well, going off this page right here, which is the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is an official United States government website, if you simply scroll down on this page, you can see that the Bureau of Economic Analysis says that changes in GDP are the most popular indicator for the nation's overall economic health. So obviously, by that definition, if the GDP is going down, that means the economy is not really healthy. And once again, we now have 2 consecutive quarters, back-to-back quarters, where the GDP has been declining in the US. And by definition, that means that the US is in recession. As you can see right here, a recession is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, identified by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. So going off Google's definition for a recession, right now the US is officially in recession based on those GDP numbers for the first 2 quarters of this year. But rather than look at just one source, we can of course look at multiple sources. Another source right here, for example, says that a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of decline in a country's gross domestic product, which is GDP, constitute a recession. So 2 back-to-back quarters where the GDP is going down, that constitutes a recession. And if you look in pretty much any financial textbook that covers the topic of recessions, you'll see that in those textbooks, they pretty much all describe a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline. And if you've been outside of the loop recently, you might be wondering why I'm spending so much time on the definition of a recession. And that's because there's people out there trying to change the definition of a recession now that the US is in recession. But by changing the definition of a recession, you're not changing the fact that the US economy is technically in decline based on GDP numbers. All you're doing is simply changing the English language. And so if the Q2 GDP number is now negative, which technically confirms a recession, why did we see the stock market and crypto markets pump on this news? And well, to answer that, there was some other reasons for the pump, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But in terms of this news right here, this negative news was pretty much fully priced in even before these numbers became official, because like I was saying earlier, we've been expecting this GDP number for the second quarter of this year to come out negative for quite some time now. It's only just today where that number became official. So basically, over the past 1 month or so, a lot of investors have already priced in this news actually happening, because it's pretty much been around a month where this was actually really obvious for the majority of people invested. So due to this bad news pretty much already being priced into the markets before we got this official news, it didn't really have much of an immediate effect on markets when this news broke. But what did have more of an effect, especially on the Nasdaq 100 index, which by the way, this is on the daily time frame for the Nasdaq 100 index, what we did see have more of an effect, especially after hours, was the fact that Amazon and the biggest company in the world, Apple, reported their earnings for the second quarter of this year, and their earnings came in better than expected. And obviously, because Amazon and Apple are some of the biggest companies in the Nasdaq 100 index, having those companies report stronger than expected earnings for the second quarter of this year was a bullish sign for those individual companies, which help raise the entire Nasdaq 100 index. And as most of you should know by now, crypto prices are heavily correlated with tech stocks. If tech stocks have a major pump, then it's very likely that crypto prices are going to pump. But if we see a major crash in the stock market, then it's very likely that we're going to see some sort of crash in crypto. Now, obviously, there's not a perfect one-to-one correlation. The correlation can be slightly off at times, but this is just generally speaking. When we generally see a major move to the upside in the stock market, usually that is bullish for crypto. So based on the bullish Fed meeting that we had yesterday and the not so bad news of the GDP numbers today because that was already expected, and the good news of Apple and Amazon earnings today, all of that helped initiate a short-term pump in the Nasdaq 100 index and really in the overall stock market. If you're looking at the S&P 500 as well, that also rose to the upside over the past couple days. But what we have to be aware of here on the daily Nasdaq 100 chart is a potential bearish divergence forming. Now, this hasn't been confirmed at the time of recording this video because we haven't confirmed the local high. But right now, technically speaking, the Nasdaq 100 index is currently making higher highs in the price action, but lower highs in the daily RSI. So this is just something to pay attention to moving forward for a potential loss in bullish momentum. But once again, as of right now, it hasn't officially confirmed because we haven't actually confirmed this as a local high just yet. And now heading into the Bitcoin part of this video, this right here is the daily Bitcoin chart, and I'm sure you can see the correlation between this daily Bitcoin chart and the Nasdaq 100 index. Because obviously, just like the stock market, the Bitcoin price is also playing out some short-term bullish price action. And like I said, for the Nasdaq 100 index, we also need to just keep in mind that a potential bearish divergence could be forming here for Bitcoin, because right now we're currently sitting in higher highs in terms of the daily candle closes for the Bitcoin price. But if you're looking at the daily Bitcoin RSI, we're currently seeing horizontal highs. So for as long as the daily Bitcoin RSI is still remaining in this higher low, higher high structure, then technically speaking, while this is happening, this is good news for the Bitcoin price, more bullish than bearish. But with that being said, usually with every decent sized Bitcoin pump, there's some people out there that feel the FOMO, just like how with pretty much every significant Bitcoin dump, there's usually people out there panicking. And as always, it is important to make decisions based on logic, not on emotions when it comes to financial decisions, that is. Because generally speaking, if you start getting into the habit of panic selling after a dump or FOMO buying after a pump, that is usually how you could lose money. But with that being said, zooming into the 4-hour Bitcoin chart, and what we can see right here is the fact that the Bitcoin price obviously broke above that golden pocket I talked about yesterday, which was acting as a bit of short-term resistance, but the Bitcoin price not only broke above it, it actually retested it and flipped it into new support. And by the way, that previous level of resistance, which is now acting as new support, is coming into play at around 22.9k, so just below 23,000. And like I said in my last video that I posted yesterday on the channel, I said that if the Bitcoin price breaks above this golden pocket, then next I'll be targeting towards around $24,000 as our next line of resistance. And right now, at the time of recording this video, the Bitcoin price is currently finding a bit of short-term resistance at around 24,000. And more specifically, if you're looking at this previous high that we set in the Bitcoin price around a week ago, then this resistance is coming in closer towards around 24.2k to 24.3k. So just above 24,000 is the resistance that I'm currently watching for Bitcoin. And once again, the support for Bitcoin, in case we get a rejection from that level of resistance, where I would expect a bounce for Bitcoin if we do see a pullback, is around 22.9k to around 23k. And in terms of the short-term trend right here for Bitcoin, technically speaking, it is more bullish than bearish based on the price action, the RSI, and the MACD, and the fact that the price is currently above the 5-day moving average, where over the past 1 month or so, we've seen these short-term bullish trends. But with that being said, it is important to understand that the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI is currently entering into overbought territories as of recording this video. And if you're looking at these other times where the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI entered into overbought territories, that meant that the Bitcoin price was due to see a bit more of a short-term cool-off. Now, in this example that we saw in early July, just after the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI entered into overbought territories, the Bitcoin price basically gave up all of those previous gains that we saw in the previous short-term bullish trend. But if you looking at the next short-term uptrend in the Bitcoin price that we saw throughout the middle of July, what we can see throughout this trend is actually 2 times where the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI entered into overbought territories. And that first time during that trend, we did see a short-term call-off, but it was an immediate short-term call-off that lasted for less than a day. And that just basically reset the RSI back down towards neutral levels, giving us some more room to the upside later on, which then we actually topped out for that short-term uptrend. So just keep that in mind. Even though the Bitcoin price might soon be getting ready for a potential short-term cool-off, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Bitcoin price has to crash down towards these lower price levels. It simply means that the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI is due due to see a bit more of a cool off back down towards neutral levels sometime soon, most likely within the next 1 to 2 days. And also, just as a side note, the RSI can actually cool off back down towards neutral levels if the price action is simply going sideways. So even a potential sideways consolidation from here could be enough to see a cool off in the RSI, which would give us more room to the upside later on. But the room to the upside in the immediate short term is somewhat limited. So I've mentioned the short-term support, short-term resistance levels that I'm currently watching for Bitcoin. I've also mentioned one of the most likely scenarios moving forward in the short term for Bitcoin, just a bit of a short-term cool-off, but potentially after a bit more of a cool-off, what would happen once the Bitcoin price potentially breaks above this resistance, just above 24K? And well, in that scenario, a break above around 24.3K would signal a move in the Bitcoin price that I actually mentioned quite a while ago, potentially back up towards around $25,500 per Bitcoin, where we also saw a capitulation low back in May. So once again, if we break above that previous high that we set roughly around a week ago, then I'll be targeting towards around 25,500. And now getting into the Ethereum part of this video, this right here is the daily Ethereum chart. And right now, as of recording this video, the Ethereum price is currently trading above that $1,700 level of resistance. And this is actually a big deal for Ethereum, especially if the price of Ethereum can now flip 1,700 into new support. Because as of right now, we don't have a lot of confirmation for this breakout to the upside. In fact, as of recording this video, there's not even a daily candle close, but by the time you're watching this video, there might be a daily candle close above 1,700. But it would be even better for the bullish case if Ethereum simply confirms 1,700 as new support with some sort of retest potentially. And with this recent move to the upside in the price of Ethereum over the past 1 to 2 days, we've seen the daily Ethereum RSI also raise back up towards this previous high. So right now, the RSI is currently at pretty much horizontal highs, but this recent high right now hasn't actually been confirmed because obviously we could still head a little bit higher. So in order to confirm a local high, especially in the daily RSI, we need to see at least one red daily candle close. And technically speaking, higher highs in the price action, but horizontal highs in the RSI is still a form of bearish divergence. It's just not as strong as a traditional bearish divergence. It's more of a weak bearish divergence. And this potential bearish divergence here is more visible on the 12-hour Ethereum chart. As we can see, the price action is clearly forming higher highs while the RSI is currently forming lower highs. But keep in mind, this recent high hasn't been confirmed in place as a high just yet, which means that technically it could still move further to the upside before then forming the high. And obviously in that case, we would not have a bearish divergence there. So that's why it's not currently confirmed. We need to see at least a red candle confirm right here in order to confirm a high. But like I said for Bitcoin and the stock market earlier in the video, this is just something else to pay attention to moving forward. Because if it does confirm, then that means we're losing bullish momentum if it does confirm once again. And one of the last significant bearish divergences we saw for Ethereum here on the 12-hour chart was at the end of March entering into early April. And obviously we saw a decent pump just before that bearish divergence, and we can see what came next. So this is just a sign of caution that hasn't been confirmed. And if you're zooming into the shorter term, taking a look at the 4-hour Ethereum chart, what we could see is obviously that recent bullish move over the past 1 day or so. And this move has taken the 4-hour Ethereum RSI up towards overbought territories, which once again means that we have limited room to the upside in the immediate short term. And so moving forward, especially if the RSI goes a little bit further into overbought territories, like back here or back here, for example, we could be due to see a bit of a cool off in the 4-hour Ethereum RSI, which essentially means either sideways price action or a bit of a pullback for the price of Ethereum. And as for levels of support for Ethereum, bringing out the Fibonacci retracement tool, and obviously as you can see with that most recent bounce that we saw a couple days ago, that was a perfect bounce along that 38.2% Fibonacci level, which is coming into play at around 1360. But if Ethereum forms a local high right here, then that 38.2% Fibonacci level moves up towards around 1430 approximately, where I would be expecting a bit of short-term support based on if we see a local high right here. And also don't forget about that important $1,700 level, because once again, we need to hold above that level in order to further confirm a potential breakout here. And in that scenario, if Ethereum can flip 1700 into new support on this daily chart, then over time, I would expect Ethereum to move up towards this next level of resistance, which is sitting at around 2000, more specifically at around 2.1 1K. And if you want to maximize your profits in crypto, you need to check out one of these uploads popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how to make money if the price is going either up or down, and the video in the bottom left shows you how to keep making money in a choppy sideways price range. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.